Chapter 4. It was nearly 5 o'clock in the evening when Jonathan finally managed to pull himself away from the library and catch the bus back to J Street. When he got off, he headed over to Mr. Graham's store. Mr. Graham had cleaned up the majority of the mess created earlier by the two boys, and was busily arranging lettuce heads in the small produce section of the store. Jonathan walked around, gathering a few things which his mother had asked him to pick up before returning home. When he was finished, he waited patiently at the cash register until Mr. Graham saw him and rushed up to check him out. "Hello, Jonathan," he said, as he practically dashed around the counter. "Hello, Mr. Graham. How's your day been, other than this morning?" Jonathan replied. "I can't get someone to fix the window until tomorrow, but otherwise, everything's all right," he said with a smile. It took quite a bit to break down Mr. Graham's spirits. "I'm glad," Jonathan said, not wanting to divulge his own uncomfortable knowledge that he had personally seen to it that the two responsible would never collect again, or possibly ever walk again either. "How is your mother?" Mr. Graham asked. "She is fine, working hard as always. And how is Mrs. Graham?" "Her hip bothers her a lot, so she cannot help in the store as often." "I'm sorry to hear that. Anything I can do?" Jonathan asked honestly. He had many fond memories of Mrs. Graham slipping him extra popsicles and ice cream cones when Mr. Graham wasn't looking. As kind as Mr. Graham was, he was stern about his business. Everyone paid, without exception. "No, she will get that hip replacement surgery here soon, and when she's recovered, she'll be right as rain." Jonathan nodded, and when Mr. Graham wasn't looking, covertly slipped a couple of 20s into a tip jar next to a register. He wasn't rich, but he did enjoy a steady source of income from his responsibilities in Tri-60. He felt it was only fair that he give back some of what had been wrongfully taken. As Jonathan walked up the street with the bundle of groceries, he noticed lights on in the abandoned apartment building across the street. He hadn't seen any evidence of it that morning, but it appeared that someone had moved in during the day. It was probably some squatters who had managed to get the power back on. Continuing on his way, he was surprised to find a moving van in front of his own building. "Everyone seems to think J Street is the new hot spot to live," he remarked aloud. He hitched up his grocery sack and peered around the moving truck to see if the new person was unloading. Finding no one there, Jonathan climbed the stairs and discovered that the new tenants would occupy the apartment just below the one he shared with his mother. He would investigate more later. "Mom, I'm home," he called out upon entering. "It's about time. Did you get the groceries?" Claire called from the kitchen. Jonathan crept up quietly behind her. "Yes," he yelled with a smile. "Oh, don't do that," she cried, recovering from the jolt. "I'm glad you finally decided to strip yourself away from the library. How was it today?" Jonathan sensed that was a little forced, as she made a concentrated effort not to talk about school or their argument that morning. "It was great, until some weirdo decided to stare at me for a while," Jonathan replied, as he helped put the groceries in the refrigerator. "Weirdo? What did he look like?" Claire asked, concerned. "He had crazy, long white hair, and he wore clothes that were really nice, but didn't quite fit him. It was like he wanted to look good, but didn't know how. Weird guy." Claire turned quickly. "What did he ask you?" Jonathan turned around, surprised at the sudden change in his mother's tone. "Just my name. How'd you know he asked me something?" She ignored his question and asked one of her own. "Did you give it to him?" Claire asked in an increasingly frantic tone. "Sure I did, but I didn't give him anything else if you're worried about it. Sheesh, it's not like I'm 4 years old talking to strangers or something. I didn't give him any money or personal identification information." I've told you 1,000 times, you don't tell people your name unless you know them, Claire nearly screamed. Jonathan had heard this, maybe not quite 1,000 times, but often enough that it wasn't anything new. He still didn't understand why she got so worked up about it. On any other day, he would have angrily made some retort. But today, he simply put up his hands defensively and replied, "Look, I'm sorry, all right? The guy didn't want anything more anyways." Claire looked him right in the eyes and pointed with a finger. "You don't know what he may have wanted. In any event, there are all kinds of scary people out there who can do some really sick things. You tell me if you see that man again." "Mom, I will. Just cool it, all right?" Jonathan said. He recalled an earlier time when a stranger had asked him his name, and when he'd been out shopping with his mother. The stranger was a store clerk, and was only being friendly. Jonathan had answered, and his mother had taken him aside and yelled at him then, too. What was the big deal? Claire turned and continued making dinner, still furious. They finished preparations in silence and ate without a word. After finishing, Jonathan quietly did the dishes and then retreated upstairs to the roof. It was nearly dark, so he dragged the chair over to the side of the roof again, where the streetlight provided enough light for reading. He cracked open one of his new books and delved into the world of physical chemistry. Similar to the relief one feels upon removing uncomfortable shoes, he relished feeling his mind expand as he released it from the cage he had to keep it in at school. "Oh, I didn't know anyone would be up here." A girl's voice suddenly interrupted his concentration, startling him. He leapt to his feet and dropped his book on the ground. "Sorry," she said, putting a hand to her mouth apologetically. Surprised by the presence of a female, a very pretty female by the first look of it, he could only manage a lame response. "That's, okay. It's just a library book, not something breakable," he said quickly, picking up the book. "Well, that's good." The girl looked around the roof before speaking again. "I hope you don't live up here?" No. I live on the 4th floor. Are you the new move-in? It's nice to meet you." "Yes, my mom and I got here today. She's starting work as a paralegal downtown. It's nice to meet you, too." "Good for your mother. Where did you move from?" "Seattle. We lived there a few years before my mom found this job. My name's Adelaide, by the way. Adelaide Taylor." Sorry. My name is Jonathan. Like I said, my mother and I live on the 4th floor right above you. Do you need any help unpacking or lifting things?" he offered, perhaps with a little self-interest tainting his generosity. He was hoping to get to know her better. "Sure, that would be great," she replied. "We've been doing it on our own. Another set of hands would be great to make it go faster." "Lead the way," he offered, following her down the fire escape into her own apartment. Once in her apartment, he was glad to see Adelaide fully in the better light. She had lovely, dark auburn hair, which stopped just above her shoulder blades, and a pleasing figure. She was several inches shorter than his own 6 feet. Her eyes were a piercing shade of blue, and she had a light smattering of freckles on her face, just enough to make her seem approachable. Her smile was the best, though. It was quick to come and lingered long enough to appreciate. "So, are you going to stand there staring, or are you going to come and make good on your earlier offer?" she asked, sounding amused rather than offended by Jonathan's lingering glance. "Sorry," he mumbled quickly. "Just show me what needs to be moved." He smiled as best he knew, hoping to impress Adelaide and set her at ease. She turned, and with an arm wave ushered Jonathan downstairs to the moving truck. Most of the small stuff had been moved out already, and they found Adelaide's mother, Julie, working on dragging out some mattresses. "Can I help you, Miss Taylor?" Jonathan asked politely. "I live up 1 floor. I just met Adelaide, and I wanted to offer some help." "That would be wonderful," Julie replied truthfully. Her hair was done up in a tight bun, but wisps were escaping with the exertion. A light sheen of sweat was apparent on her forehead. "These things don't move very well," she remarked as she wrestled with the mattresses. "They never do." The three of them quickly began unloading the remaining items. It was about 9 o'clock when they finished. Miss Taylor offered to get a pizza delivered and invited Jonathan to stay and share it. Enjoying their company, he accepted, and they spent the rest of the late evening talking and getting to know one another. As it turned out, Miss Taylor was a trained paralegal and had just landed a good job for a large security firm downtown. It promised to pay fairly well if she stayed with it long enough. Adelaide watched Jonathan easily speak with her mother, asking her astute and well-informed questions about recent regulations that had come down from the SEC regarding stock compensation for corporate bigwigs. Based on her first impression, Adelaide hadn't pegged Jonathan as an overly intelligent sort of person. Despite having exchanged only a few words with him to this point, she felt an odd connection with him, as if she had known him for years. She had noticed it when she had first approached him, before she had even reached the top of the fire escape and set foot on the roof. She had known not only that someone was up there, but also that that person was someone who would be important for her to know. Being with him now, she felt that premonition again. Her guesses about such things had always been right. She had known when her father would leave, and had even discovered why, without him ever saying a word. When he'd left, she knew he wouldn't be coming back, even though he assured her they would see each other again soon. Somehow, she had also known that whatever had taken him away was vitally important. Her mother had taken the parting hard, but also seemed to understand. As much as Adelaide wanted to talk to her about it, she had felt inside it was something her mother wasn't ready to talk about, and she'd respected that. They'd moved around quite a bit since then. Her mother claimed it was always in search of a better position, but Adelaide suspected there was another reason. A move always seemed to follow something sensational or strange, like a freak blizzard in an off-season month, or when someone had been friendly but apparently shown too much interest in her mother and herself. She wasn't sure if it was her imagination or something more, but Adelaide felt that this time was different. She just wasn't sure if it was a good or a bad kind of different. Before Jonathan left, he asked Adelaide about her plans for the following day. "I realize you just got here, but will you be at school tomorrow?" "Yes, you will," Julie answered for her. "We should get you registered at the very least." "I can help with that," Jonathan quickly offered, and not just because he wanted to spend more time with Adelaide. He wanted to be the first to explain to her how Tri-60 works, and what registering for status within the gang meant. New transfers were always treated with some suspicion, because they could be spies from a rival gang. Jonathan planned to forestall any unpleasantness. He also wanted to explain why he dressed like a ruffian, and hopefully to get her to see who he really was. "Well, I suppose I'd better just dive back into it. Where and when?" Adelaide asked. "Down the street there's a bus stop. I'll meet you there about 7:30. "Sounds good," she replied, smiling. They parted, Jonathan feeling that life had definitely taken a turn for the better. Back inside his apartment, he recalled the earlier fight with his mother. Deciding it would be best to make peace now, rather than try to sleep through it, he went to her door and quietly knocked. "Mom?" "Come in." He entered to find her laying on her bed, reading a book. "Aren't you up sort of late for a school night?" "I was helping the new move-ins downstairs." "Oh, I forgot to go and check on that. I saw their moving van when I got back from work earlier. I should have taken them something. Why didn't you come up and have me help?" "I didn't think about it. Sorry," he replied. "And I'm sorry about earlier this evening." "As am I. But I need you to understand something very important, so listen carefully. You should not go around telling people your name, for any reason, unless you know who they are and why they are asking. Trust me on this." Jonathan wanted to ask what the big deal was, but he didn't want to ruin what had really been a quick, painless reconciliation. He nodded, said goodnight, and went to his room. Looking around, he wondered what Adelaide might think if she saw the slovenly conditions in which he lived. Suddenly, he felt a new motivation to clean his room. As he did so, he saw his reflection in the mirror. He still looked like a hoodlum, and immediately cursed himself for not having the foresight to change into normal clothes before a beautiful girl climbed up on his roof. Then, still staring at himself, he thought back to the encounter with the strange man in the library. Why would anyone care about my name?